The sky tore like cheap foil. No sound, just light. A silent ribbon of violet fire unraveling across the midnight clouds. Most of the city slept through it. A few dogs barked, a power line flickered and sighed back into its regular hum. On the pier, corner of Bailey and Ninth, the only witness was a pizza delivery scooter whose AI driver was too occupied arguing with a street sign to notice the event over its shoulder. The object fell fast, sharp, silent, then slammed into an alley with the muffled crunch of metal surrendering to Earth's stubborn gravity. Steam hissed from ruptured panels. Sparks blinked like confused fireflies and something inside groaned. Not machine, not metal. Living. Saw dragged herself out of the jagged crescent of the hull, legs trembling, cradling the infant against her, chest with one arm, her other hand left streaks of translucent blue across the shattered pavement. Io, wrapped in thermal weave, cooed, once, then went silent. He always went silent when she was afraid. Maybe that was a survival instinct in his half-born mind, or maybe he was just clever. She crouched behind a collapsed trash bin scanning the street. Her ears, long, luminous, and usually hidden, twitched at every human noise. The buzz of neon, the hum of a bus gliding past. Somewhere nearby, someone was playing music too loud for the hour. The lyrics meant nothing to her, but the rhythm had a strange warmth, like someone trying to speak comfort in a language made entirely of mistakes. She did not know this planet. It spun too slowly. The atmosphere was acidic compared to what her lungs knew. The moon stared too boldly, and the stars were all in the wrong places. She could have cried, but her body no longer had that luxury. She had to move. The alley became her home. The cracked bulkhead door from the wreck served as a makeshift roof. A stolen food dispenser rescued from a scrap heap was her kitchen. Her bed was a pile of torn billboard plastic that still bore the smiling face of a man selling toothpaste with far too many teeth. She called him Ambassador Smile. He watched over them each night. Io was getting sick. His breathing had taken on a wheeze, and his skin pulsed faintly with every cough, turning shades Saw didn't recognize. The milk substitute she had synthesized from local protein sources wasn't metabolizing properly. She tried blending bits of earth food into it, crumbs from half-eaten sandwiches, greasy noodles from takeout containers, but the results smelled like despair and made Io's eyes water. 3 days passed, 4. Time was slippery. People avoided her without seeing her. Their eyes slid past her like she was graffiti or a patch of shadow too complicated to look at. One boy tossed a coin in her lap once, mistaking her for a novelty act. She still had that coin. She tried to buy a meal with it and was promptly escorted out of a diner by a robot host with glowing eyebrows and an accent that sounded vaguely threatening in every language. Then came the man. He wasn't remarkable at first glance. Tall, scruffy, wearing a jacket that had lost its allegiance to any season. His face had the weary look of someone who once cared a lot, and now just cared in manageable doses. He had 2 bags in his hands, one full of groceries, the other of questionable leftovers he'd scraped from a school faculty fridge before being let go. He saw her, not past her, at her. "You hungry?" he asked, blinking like he wasn't quite sure what he was seeing. So froze. She adjusted Io's weight, poised to flee. He crouched slowly, holding out the second bag. "There's granola bars. They might be expired, but they're not evil." "Probably." She stared. Words. English. She knew fragments, broken shards of sound she'd pieced together from overheard conversations and discarded instruction chips. "Grand Bar," she echoed. He laughed. "Close enough. I'm Cal." She looked down at Io, who blinked sleepily, then back at the man. "Cal? Well, I mean Cal, but that works too." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I don't know what's going on here, if you're in trouble or if this is some very elaborate cosplay situation. Her people did not trust easily, not anymore, but this planet's cold was biting at her bones, and Io had stopped twitching in his sleep. That was a bad sign. He stood up and pointed down the street. "I live 4 blocks from here. Hot water, food, a couch that's technically clean if you avoid the left cushion." She narrowed her eyes. Trap? Wow. He blinked. That's blunt. No, not a trap. Just a guy offering help, which I realized sounds exactly like what someone running a trap would say. Saw didn't smile, but something flickered behind her expression. An almost smile, maybe. She nodded once. He led her through the streets with careful steps. She limped behind him, her body protesting, her mind sharper than it should have been. She counted every exit, memorized every building face. She noted which cars had no license plates. Her training never let her rest. Cal's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building with a hallway that smelled like burnt toast and forgotten socks. Inside, the place was cluttered but clean. Bookshelves buckled under the weight of biology textbooks and modeled dinosaurs. A rubber plant in the corner drooped like it had given up on life, but hadn't gotten around to dying. A cat stared at her from a shelf. It meowed, then sneezed. She hissed back instinctively. The cat looked impressed. "This is home," Cal said, dropping the bags and kicking off his shoes. "Try not to judge the decor, or the smell. Especially the smell." Sa sat carefully on the edge of the couch. It sagged. Io whimpered, and Cal tossed her a blanket with stars printed on it. She wrapped it around them both. He handed her a mug of something steaming. She sniffed. It smelled like bitterness and heat. Earth fuel? Close. Coffee. She sipped. She made a face like she'd swallowed battery fluid. Poison. Cal snorted. "Yeah, that's fair." They sat in silence. The city murmured outside the window. The radiator clanked to life with a startled wheeze. Sa glanced at him, her voice a whisper of rough syllables. "Why help?" Cal looked surprised. He stared into his own mug, then shrugged. "Honestly, I've been dumped, fired, and ghosted by my landlord all in the same week. Helping you might be the first non-disastrous thing I've done in months." She tilted her head. "Disasters?" "It's like regular errors, but worse." She blinked slowly. Strange. Thank you." "You too," he said, smiling genuinely for the first time in days. Io gurgled and finally fell asleep. Sa looked down at her child, then back at the man. Maybe she had landed on the wrong planet. Maybe it wasn't safe, but maybe, just maybe, the stars had messed up in the right way for once. She exhaled and leaned back against the couch. The stars could wait. The first thing Sailor tried to do in Cal's apartment was fight a houseplant. To be fair, it had startled her, something about the twisted stalks and the way the leaves drooped with passive aggression. She'd mistaken it for a dormant predator, possibly some Earth variant of the grallvine species, which on her planet could digest small animals in under 10 seconds, and had been outlawed as home decor after several unfortunate family reunions. Cal walked into the living room just in time to see her poised with a soup ladle aimed at the ficus. "You know, most people just water it," he said, lifting an eyebrow. Sa turned slowly, eyes narrowing at him like he just declared himself pro-plague. He cleared his throat. "Let me guess, carnivorous, looks hungry? Yeah, it's just depressed." Sa considered that, then lowered the ladle. The second thing she tried to do was use the microwave, which she referred to afterward only as the white cube of chaos. Cal had left her with instructions written in large marker on a sticky note, accompanied by doodles. Press button, spin plate, warm food. Instead, she managed to turn it into a strobe light, melted half a spoon, and nearly vaporized a frozen burrito. Io had giggled the entire time, clapping each time the machine blinked, like it was a fireworks show. "I'm going to put a skull and crossbones sticker on that thing," Cal muttered after unplugging the appliance and opening all the windows. Say nodded solemnly. Trap box. Despite the domestic confusion, things began to take shape. Cal borrowed an old air mattress from his neighbor and set it up in the corner of the living room with sheets printed in cartoon whales. So eyed them with suspicion. "These sea predators?" "Technically no, but they've got a PR problem." She didn't understand most of what he said, but the cadence of his voice became familiar, comforting. Cal, on the other hand, was still adjusting to having what he referred to as 2.5 aliens under his roof. Eo was quieter now, his strange breathing gradually stabilizing. Sa had begun blending bits of Earth nutrition bars into her emergency rations with better results. Her sharp gaze never left the child for more than a few seconds. She watched over him like a sentry. One evening, Cal returned from the corner store with a sack of groceries and 2 mismatched socks. He kicked the door shut behind him and announced, "I brought food, caffeinated regret, and duct tape. We're prepared for anything now." Sailor poked through the bag, lifting a can with a pop art peach on the label. "This is food?" "Depending on your standards, smells like old glue." "That's the syrup, it's an acquired taste." She frowned. "Earth eats many strange things." "You should see what we drink." He pulled out a bottle of neon green soda and offered it. She took one sip, blinked, and looked personally offended. "Tastes like static." "Yep, delicious carbonated static." In the days that followed, Cal tried to teach Sailor the basics of English using a picture book he had rescued from a former classroom. It featured smiling, anthropomorphic animals engaging in activities no real creature would ever consider, such as a bear wearing a tutu while delivering mail. "This is not a normal thing?" Sa asked, pointing at the bear. "No," Cal replied. "If you ever see that in real life, run." They practiced each night. Cal would sit cross-legged on the carpet, and Sailor would perch on the edge of the couch like it might try to betray her. Eo sat between them, often trying to chew on the corner of the book. "House," Cal would say, pointing at the picture. "Ooh. Close. Enough. Sky. Very good." He paused at one word. "Friend." There was a cartoon cat offering soup to a shivering duck, the kind of scene that tried a little too hard to wring emotions out of blue-eyed animals. He hesitated. "Friend," he said quietly. Sailor looked at the page, then at him. "Friend." He smiled. That night, Sailor watched as he fell asleep on the couch halfway through a documentary about marine bioluminescence. She listened to his breathing, studied the way he curled up like he had to defend his own dreams. There was a sadness in him she recognized, not the sharp kind that wounded, but the dull, worn-down ache of someone used to being alone too long. She stood quietly and adjusted the blanket over him. The documentary kept playing. Jellyfish drifted across the screen, glowing like thoughts in the dark. Things changed subtly after that. She stopped flinching at sudden noises. He stopped apologizing every time he forgot to hide the kitchen knives. They began sharing breakfast, Cal with his endless toast and peanut butter routine, and Sa with her carefully rationed nutrient packs that looked like melted crayons but smelled faintly of cinnamon. Cal tried to introduce her to television, which was a mistake. The first time she watched a sitcom, she assumed the laugh track was some form of punishment. Every time the audience cackled, she tensed like she was being tested. "Why do they laugh?" she asked, frowning at the screen. "Because someone said something dumb. But no one actually laughs." "I know. That's the horrifying part." She refused to watch anything with clowns. That was non-negotiable. "Too many teeth," she said. "One tried to hug me once. Bad memory." Cal didn't ask for details. One afternoon, Sa disappeared for 2 hours. Cal panicked, ransacked the apartment, and was halfway to filing a missing persons report when she returned carrying an old toaster. "It was free," she said, triumphant. "It's also haunted," Cal replied, eyeing the blackened cord. "I'm not plugging that in unless we have an exorcist on speed dial." They ended up using it as a bookend. By the second week, Cal noticed her ears. He'd seen them before, of course, but now he noticed the way they shimmered when she was tired and flicked subtly when Io made a sound. They were beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with human aesthetics. Not ornamental, functional, like antennae tuned to a language no one else could hear. He mentioned them one night hesitantly. "Do they, sense anything? Vibration, sound?" She tilted her head. "Yes, and lies." "Oh. Cool." She waited a beat, then smirked. "Joke." "Right. Hilarious. You've been watching my stand-up DVDs again, haven't you?" "Very educational." Laughing. "At own failure is common Earth ritual." Cal threw a pillow at her. She caught it effortlessly. There was still danger. Sailor knew it. She heard whispers in the electric hum of the city. She saw signs, markings left on alley walls that weren't, graffiti, patterns in the flight of drones too smooth to be coincidence. But for now, the small apartment was a shelter, a bubble, a place between past and future. One night, she sat beside Cal in silence, Io asleep between them. She whispered, "Thank you." He looked up, surprised. "For what?" She tapped her chest, then pointed to him. "You, no weapon, you warm." He looked at her, unsure what to say. Then finally he chuckled. "Well, I did try to fight a rat with a broom last week, so I'm not entirely harmless." Sailor nodded. "Very brave." I screamed like a flute. She smiled, truly smiled, and for the first time, Cal wondered not where she had come from, but why. It felt like she belonged here. Io stirred, made a soft chirrup, and went still again. The stars outside blinked faintly, like distant signals trying to find a way home. The cat had declared war. Its campaign was subtle, psychological, deeply strategic. It began with silent stares from high shelves, evolved into slow, deliberate paw pats on Sailor's food packs, and climaxed in a full-blown nocturnal assault on Cal's prized taxidermy T-Rex, an item neither T nor Rex, but which had sentimental value from a flea market adventure involving a man in a cape and an iguana, named Francis. Sailor watched the cat with the wary respect one might reserve for a low-level spy. "It waits," she muttered, adjusting the strap of the modified sling that held Io close to her chest. "It plans." Cal, munching cereal in the kitchen, called back, "It's a cat. Planning is mostly just rethinking naps." The cat, named Biscuit for unknown reasons that no one would take credit for, sat on the windowsill licking one paw with studied indifference. Io babbled happily, trying to grab the cat's tail. Biscuit responded by flicking said tail just out of reach, a gesture so passive-aggressive it deserved a degree in diplomacy. Outside, the city groaned to life. Sirens in the distance, garbage, trucks wheezing past, the usual chorus of early morning irritations. Sailor stood at the window gazing toward the skyline. The light here was too thin, too yellow. It made everything look faded. "Something's wrong," she said. Cal didn't look up, from his cereal. "Wrong like global catastrophe wrong, or wrong like you just remembered there's mayo in the fridge wrong?" She turned to him, ears tilting. "The air smells coated." He blinked. "I'm not even going to pretend to know what that means. There's signal under the static. You don't hear it? I mostly hear you judging my breakfast choices." He lifted the cereal box in defense. "It has fiber, that counts as health." But Sa was already at the window again, eyes narrowing. Her hands twitched with reflexive calculations. There were waves moving through the atmosphere, too smooth, too patterned. Not natural, not weather. Someone was looking, listening. Cal joined her, squinting as if that might help. "Do I need to worry about this, or are we still in vague foreboding territory?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled a piece of copper wire from a drawer, one of Cal's many DIY leftovers, and twisted it around her wrist, anchoring it with a small gray disc. A shimmer pulsed once beneath her skin. "I'm tuning out the buzz," she said, eyes closed. "Now, Salty might be scout class, or reclaimer." "That sounds very comforting," Cal muttered, sitting on the arm of the couch and putting down his cereal. "They're not here for diplomacy." "Ah, even more comforting." Io yawned, then sneezed a glob of iridescent mucus that hovered in midair before sizzling out of existence. Biscuit watched, tail twitching, clearly displeased by the physics violation. Cal rubbed his face. "Okay, real question. Do I need to start building a bunker, or is this a stay indoors and pretend you're dead kind of threat?" "Neither. Yet." "Great. So we're at mild existential dread. I can work with that." Sailor moved with purpose now, scanning the apartment, her hands ghosting over surfaces, her thoughts racing far faster than any human's. She pulled a coil of fiber optic thread from her belongings and unwound it carefully with practiced fingers. She began shaping it into a net, murmuring numbers in a language Cal would never understand. The lights dimmed for a second, then normalized. Cal leaned back, watching her. Is that some kind of shield? Not shield. Filter. If they scan, it'll show static. This apartment will look like a dead zone. He whistled low. That's impressive. She paused. You keep microwave. I keep neural mesh. I knew that microwave was cursed. Not cursed, loud. Cal stood and wandered over to where she was weaving. So are these, whoever they are, looking for you specifically? She didn't answer right away. Then, possibly. Maybe not just me. There were others scattered during descent. Not all survived. Those who did might draw attention. Like a galactic search party? Not party. More like cleanup crew. Cleanup as in mop and bleach, or cleanup as in vaporize evidence and anything near it? She gave him a look. Right. The second one. They fell into silence except for the soft clicking of the mesh as it tightened across the window. Outside, a transport drone drifted past, its lights flickering in sequence. Sa didn't flinch, but Cal saw the way her shoulders tensed. Later that day, Sa allowed Cal to accompany her on a short supply walk. It wasn't far, 2 blocks to a discount electronics store that Cal insisted had parts almost as good as legal. He wore sunglasses despite the overcast sky, and walked like a man trying very hard not to look like a bodyguard. Are we just going to pretend I'm not totally conspicuous here? He whispered. You already look suspicious, Sailor replied deadpan. Adding effort only makes it worse. Io snored quietly in her sling, his skin a pale blue-green today, which meant he was either content or digesting something strange, possibly both. In the store, Sa navigated the aisles like a predator, grabbing components so quickly the security camera couldn't track her hand. Cal chatted with the cashier, a kid named Milo who wore LED earrings and smelled like something freshly soldered. You building a time machine? Milo asked, watching Sailor with a mix of curiosity and mild fear. No, Cal replied. Just a very opinionated toaster. On the way back, Sailor stopped suddenly and tilted her head toward the sky. The air pulsed. Not a sound, more like a feeling pressing against their bones. They're sweeping, she whispered. Broad scan, low-frequency net. Crude? Crude as in safe. Crude as in desperate. They hurried back to the apartment. Inside, the neural mesh held. The scan passed over like wind. A whisper of something ancient brushed against Sailor's mind, and for a heartbeat she felt seen. Not identified, not targeted, just noted. She shivered. That night she sat by the window while Cal dozed on the couch, an open book on his chest. Io snuggled in the crook of his arm, purring faintly. Biscuit slept upside down on the backrest, feet twitching. Sailor tapped her wrist, pulling up a faint hologram of coded star maps. She traced a line between 2 points, paused, then blinked the map away. Tomorrow she would begin building again. Not just nets and filters. She would need a communicator, something powerful enough to ping the edge of this galaxy. Risky, but necessary. Because someone had heard the crash and someone else might be listening. Cal had never seen a baby eat a power cable before. To be fair, Io wasn't eating it in the traditional sense. He was siphoning residual electricity through a tiny filament extending from his lower jaw, an appendage that, to Cal's eternal horror, hadn't existed the day before. It shimmered like glass and hummed like a tuned violin string. Cal crouched in the hallway, watching the toddler chew contentedly on the surge protector like it was a piece of futuristic licorice. I feel like I should stop this, he whispered. But also I'm afraid if I do, I'll void the warranty on my own life. Sa glanced over from the couch where she was sorting through a bundle of salvaged processors. He's converting current. It's a growth phase, like your teeth falling out, only louder. I'm sorry, louder? As if on cue, Io burped, and the hallway light flickered. Sailor shrugged. Temporary. Once his internal battery stabilizes, the surges should stop. Should is a terrifying word. It is, she agreed calmly, threading a filament through the core of a circuit board, especially when used by humans attempting rocket science. Hey, we made it to the moon. Congratulations. It's still just a rock with commitment issues. Cal muttered something under his breath and retreated to the kitchen, where he was trying to design a sandwich that could survive both the apocalypse and Io's grabby hands. He'd gotten halfway through the blueprint when the door buzzed. He froze. Sailor sat upright. Even Biscuit, perched on the bookshelf like a furry gargoyle, narrowed his eyes. They weren't expecting anyone. Cal approached the intercom like it might bite. "Hello?" A cheerful voice answered, overly rehearsed. "Hi there. We're conducting a neighborhood energy audit and wondered if you'd be willing to let us take a quick look at your home power consumption." Cal blinked. "You want to audit my toaster?" There was a pause. "Among other things, yes." He didn't like that pause. Or the other things. He turned to Saw. "Possible scouts? Possible traps?" She was already packing the circuit boards into her satchel. "Time to vanish." "Not yet." Cal gritted his teeth and pressed the button again. "Sorry, not a good time. The baby just turned into a Tesla coil. Come back never." The buzzer went silent. Outside, the shadows didn't move, but they felt thicker somehow. Sailor moved fast. "Pack minimal. Priority items only. We leave within the hour." "But what about the cat?" "Biscuit will survive. He is clearly immortal." They scrambled. Cal shoved. Clothes, tools, half a loaf of bread, and a mug labeled #1 hypochondriac into a backpack. Sailor wrapped Io in a solar-lined cloak designed to mask heat signatures. The baby squeaked once, blinked twice, then resumed chewing on a spoon. 30 minutes later, they were on the roof. Cal had never climbed the building's fire escape before, mostly because he valued his shins, and partly because he wasn't in the habit of needing an escape route. Now he wheezed beside a satellite dish as Sailor scanned the sky. Io, unfazed by the urgency, was playing with a button from Cal's jacket, attempting to telekinetically unscrew it. Sailor adjusted a handheld device shaped like a tuning fork. It buzzed softly. "They're using pulse sweep drones. Low visibility, high accuracy. This area will be indexed within 4 hours." "And by indexed, you mean?" "Scrubbed, scorched, cleaned with extreme prejudice," Cal muttered. "Great. Nothing says hospitality like a death drone." He peeked over, the rooftop edge. Down below, a man in a gray vest stood beside a van that had no company logos and too many antennae. "They're still waiting," he said. Sailor looked at him. "They won't wait long." "I know a place," Cal said suddenly. "It's not much, but it's off-grid. I stayed there once during a minor legal misunderstanding." "You mean you skipped jury duty and hid in a cabin?" "Details are subjective." She looked at him, then nodded. "Lead the way." 2 subway rides, 1 stolen bike, and a very confused goat later, they arrived at the cabin. It was nestled at the edge of a forgotten woodland preserve, somewhere between civilization and total Wi-Fi dead zone. Cal opened the creaky door and gestured grandly. "Welcome to Casa de Nope." Sailor entered first, scanning with a small orb that hovered just above her hand, blinking green once. "No thermal trails, we're clear." Cal dropped the bags with a grunt. "And it only smells mildly haunted." "Smells like old shoes and maple fungus." "Exactly." Io squealed happily and promptly floated 2 inches off the ground in excitement. Sigh. Didn't bat an eye. "This place will work," Cal said. "I've got some solar panels on the roof, a generator in the back, and—" A loud thud echoed from the bathroom. They froze. A moment later, a raccoon shuffled out, dragging a half-eaten protein, bar in one paw and a rubber ducky in the other. "Ah," Cal muttered. "Larry's still here." "Friend of yours?" "More like a squatter with attitude. Don't make eye contact." Larry the raccoon hissed once and vanished behind a pile of broken lawn chairs. They spent the next few hours securing the perimeter. Cal rigged motion sensors and Saw erected a field jammer that made every electronic within 20 meters sound like a wet dial-up modem. Io built a small tower out of old spoons and mysterious glowing pebbles. That night, they sat on the porch watching stars blink through the trees. Cal passed a can of beans to Saw, who examined it like it might be a weapon. "You open it," she said. "You trust me that much?" "No, you just owe me for the raccoon trauma." Cal grinned and cracked the can. "So what now? We run forever?" Sailor stared at the sky. "We hide. We signal. We hope." "That's your plan? And yours?" He looked at her. "Make sure the baby doesn't eat the cabin." Io sneezed, and a porch. Light exploded. Cal sighed. "We're doomed." Sailor smiled faintly. "Not yet." Biscuit arrived 3 days later, smug and mysteriously clean, riding atop an autonomous lawnmower like a tiny warlord returning from conquest. "Of course he found us," Cal muttered. "He probably tracked us by scent." Inside, the cabin might not have been safe forever, but for now it was theirs. Cal was trying to repair a toaster when the cabin screamed. Not literally, of course, cabins didn't have vocal cords, but the sound the generator made was close enough. This long, choking wail that started low in the floorboards and ended in a sputtering buzz like someone had stepped on a robotic goose. Lights flickered. The fridge hiccuped and died. Io, mid-nap, levitated straight up in alarm, bounced off the ceiling and landed on Biscuit, who hissed and bolted into a pile of laundry. Sailor stood calmly in the corner, arms crossed. "You modified the generator again." Cal was still holding a smoking screwdriver. "Define modify." She pointed to the melted plug. "Okay," he conceded. "Maybe I overestimated the resilience of duct tape." "That was not duct tape, that was reflective candy wrapper." "It was structurally similar." She arched a long, judgmental eyebrow. Cal sighed and dropped into a chair, waving the smoke away. "I was trying to reroute the power to the antenna array. Thought maybe we could boost the signal and reach someone beyond the sweep range. And instead you turned the cabin into a very flammable scarecrow. Look, it's been days. If we don't make contact soon, we're just sitting ducks with a baby and a cat and a vengeful raccoon." Larry, as if on cue, rattled something under the porch. Cal flinched. "See? That's not natural. That raccoon is planning something." Saw didn't argue. She approached the cabinet and pulled out a slim device the size of a harmonica. It was covered in shimmering ridges that changed color depending on how the light struck them. She handed it to Cal. "What is this?" he asked. "Pulse anchor. High bandwidth, quantum skip compatible. You'll need to patch it through analog if you want to avoid detection, but it's cleaner than the toaster." "I thought you said you didn't have a communicator." "I said I didn't have one built. That one's dormant, needs a clean link." Cal stared at it. "Why didn't you give me this before?" "You were bonding with the tools. I didn't want to interrupt." He blinked. "You mean while I was being electrocuted by a bread appliance?" Emotional growth is uncomfortable. Cal decided not to argue with a woman who'd once threatened a customs robot with a spork. They spent the next few hours converting the shed behind the cabin into a signal room. It had previously housed, according to Cal, a lawnmower that died, under mysterious circumstances and several buckets of mysterious goo. He swore the goo wasn't sentient. Sailor wasn't so sure. Inside, they strung up fiber lines, mounted the pulse anchor to the ceiling, and grounded the system with parts scavenged from an old ham radio and something Io had been using as a teething ring. The baby, supervised from a floating bassinet Sailor, had cobbled together out of mattress foam and anti-grav scraps. "I'm giving him a 70% chance of building a death ray by age 5, Cal murmured. "Optimistic," Sailor replied. "He already dismantled the coffee machine. That exploded because you were using it wrong." "It's coffee. There is no wrong. Tell that to the hole in the counter." They powered up the device just after sunset. The pulse anchor hummed slowly, then faster, then suddenly emitted a sound like a whale trying to speak Morse code. A blue sphere flickered in the air, scanning patterns dancing across the cabin walls. Cal shielded his eyes. "Should it be doing that?" "No," Sailor said, eyes wide. "It's being intercepted." The sphere snapped into a solid image, a face blurry at first, then slowly sharpening. Not human. Pale skin modeled like quartz, black eyes, no whites, no mouth. When it spoke, It was through vibrations in the air. Unregistered beacon, identify. Sailor stepped forward. Directive 12B, Scout Class Vessel Designation Aratine, surviving passenger non-combatant. There was a pause, then, children detected, on hybrid. Cal raised a hand. Hybrid's doing great, thanks for asking. He's also right here, so maybe ease off the ominous robot voice. Sailor shot him a look. Let me handle this. The voice resumed. Extraction team en route. You are to remain in stasis until retrieval. Interference will result in containment protocols. The transmission cut. Cal stared at the empty space where the face had been. That wasn't exactly warm. They're not rescuers, Saw said. That was a system-bound automation protocol response. They'll come, but they won't ask questions first. Wait, are you saying we just called the space police on ourselves? More like the space janitors. They don't distinguish between threats and anomalies. I am an anomaly, she sighed. Look at this hair. We have 3 days maximum. After that, the cabin will be a crater. There was a long pause, then Biscuit coughed up a USB stick. Cal blinked. Okay, not where I thought that. The sentence would end. Sailor bent to examine it. This isn't random. You mean the cat found it? Possibly, or someone wanted us to find it. Cal picked up the stick with 2 fingers, still slightly sticky. What if this is a trap? Then we spring it carefully. Back inside, they plugged it into an old laptop that whined like a dying moose. A file popped open. No encryption, just coordinates and a name. Haven Node, 6 Concord Echo. Sailor whispered, That's a rebel station, old network pre-collapse. Cal's eyes widened. You think they're still alive? If they are, they'll help. If they're not, maybe their signal is... He stared at the screen, then at her. We're running again, aren't we? She nodded. Cal stood. Fine, but we're not leaving. The cat this time. Agreed. Also, I'm not riding with the goat. No promises. They began packing at dawn. The world was quiet again, the kind of silence that meant something terrible was trying to decide if now was the right time to show up. As they loaded the car, Io giggling in his float cradle, Biscuit glaring from the roof rack, and Larry watching silently from the woods, Cal looked back once at the cabin. Shame, he said. It had charm. And asbestos. Sailor adjusted the app. Next up, underground rebellion, maybe salvation. And if it's a trap, then we improvise. He nodded. You're really bad at reassuring speeches, you know. She smiled faintly. I know. They drove into the rising sun, a makeshift family in a borrowed car, hoping the universe had better plans than vaporization. The road out of the woods had once been paved, or at least it had pretended to be. Now it was a suggestion of a road, gravel clinging to craters, weeds poking through ancient cracks, and more than a few unnerving carcasses of roadside robots that had clearly picked the wrong hiking trails. Cal gripped the wheel like it might try to escape his hands. This car has a personality, he muttered, and that personality is spite. It's fine, Saw said without looking up from her scanner. Stable axle, resilient engine. Internal matrix only 70% compromised by rust. That's oddly specific. So is your cholesterol. Io burbled happily from the back seat, kicking his feet against the anti-grav cradle they'd managed to wedge between a cooler full of crackers and a box of things Cal described only as technically edible. The baby's ears had started glowing, faintly in rhythm with the engine hum. Cal was trying not to think about what that meant. Do his ears always do that? Only during signal resonance, so not concerning at all? No more than Biscuit sleeping on the dashboard. The cat, of course, had claimed the entire front console. Every few minutes he'd paw at the climate controls like a moody god deciding between winter and tropical storm. Does he even know what temperature he wants? Cal asked. No, Sailor said. But it's not about need, it's about dominance. The car sputtered as they passed a half-collapsed billboard advertising Quantum Cola, taste the timeline. Cal squinted at the coordinates again, following the pulsing blue dot on the device SA had dubbed the not going to save you but might give you hope box. So how far to Concord Echo? approximately 93 km underground, possibly booby-trapped, definitely unlicensed. You had me at booby-trapped. 2 hours later, they arrived at what could only be described as a completely non-suspicious hill in the middle of nowhere. It had a tree. One tree. A sign hung crookedly from its branch, written in flaking paint. No entry seriously. Cal got out, stretched his legs, and frowned. If I were hiding a rebel outpost, I'd use more subtle signage. Sailor pointed to a stone by the tree. With a flick of her wrist, she projected a map from her scanner. The tree lit up in response. Callie stepped back. Okay, I take it back. That's a very judgmental tree. The ground shuddered. A circle of earth beneath them hissed open, revealing a spiral ramp descending into a shaft glowing with soft blue light. You go first, Cal said. Say didn't answer. She was already halfway down. The tunnel twisted and widened, walls lined with dormant tech. Some of it Cal recognized, most of it he didn't. One panel was labeled in 6 languages, one of which he was fairly certain was just aggressive whistling. As they moved deeper, Io's ears pulsed brighter, his giggles echoing oddly against the metal. This place is alive, Cal whispered. Like breathing residual neural grid, the node's AI is still active. Good. I missed being judged by omniscient walls. They reached the central chamber, a cavernous room filled with rows of dusty consoles, cracked display units, and a massive holographic globe suspended in the center, rotating slowly. A single word flickered above it. Status, sleep. Sailor stepped forward and placed her palm against the nearest terminal. It lit instantly, casting her face in blue glow. Hello, Conquered, she said softly. A pause. Then the globe shuddered. The word changed status. Awake. A voice emerged, tiny and distant like someone whispering through a waterfall of static. User identified. Welcome, Sailor Trine. System integrity compromised. Directive override? Yes. Activate node awareness. We need access to archival comms and historical traffic. Another pause. Parameters expanded. Query origin? Pursuit system. Class enforcers. I'm seeking sanctuary and potential rebel contact. Cal leaned over. Ask if they've got snacks. The globe ignored him. Instead, a panel slid open, revealing a set of sealed boxes. Inside were medical supplies, batteries, and something labeled Emergency Synth Meat Grade 2.5. Cal lifted a packet suspiciously. Is it weird that I'm kind of hungry anyway? No, S.A. said. That's just desperation. Io floated up to the console, pressing one sticky hand to the globe. The entire system flickered. Sailor stiffened. He's interacting with it. But not just interfacing, he's rewriting. What does that mean? It means his hybrid genetics are overriding the local AI. Cal blinked. Wait, he's hacking the base with his fingers? The room shook. On the far wall, a dormant screen crackled to life. A stream of text flew by too fast to read. Then the voice returned, stronger now. Directive amended. Protective custody authorized. Alert. Multiple surveillance satellites in low orbit. Probability of detection rising. Sailor, we need to go deeper. There's a deeper? This node had subnodes, black channel tiers. One might still be hidden. Cal looked around. You mean more stairs? I mean, we're going into the part of the bunker where even the AI didn't want to live. They found the access. Tunnel behind a panel that only opened after Io drooled on it. Sailor raised an eyebrow. Biometric encryption via infant saliva. Revolutionary. Babies, Cal muttered. Nature's skeleton keys. The tunnel was tighter, darker. The lights dimmed the farther they went until finally they stepped into a circular chamber that looked nothing like the rest of the node. It was warm, lined with strange plant-like coils that pulsed with color. In the center, a cradle, empty, waiting. Cal approached, cautious. Was this for Io? Sailor nodded slowly. Or one like him. This node was experimenting, not just resistance, integration. You mean hybrids? Yes. They were building families. Cal turned slowly, taking it in. So what happened to them? She stared at the walls, running her hand across the vines. They stopped answering. A soft sound filled the room. Not a hum, not a pulse. A lullaby in a language Cal didn't know, but one Io did. He cooed, curled up, and instantly fell asleep. Okay, Cal whispered. So we found the secret underground rebel daycare. Sailor knelt beside the cradle, her fingers trembling. We found hope. Cal sat beside her. And we found a place no one ever wanted us to find. Above them, the node sealed itself. Outside, far overhead, stars blinked in rhythms that weren't random. Something was watching. But for the first time, they weren't running. They were waiting. Together. Conquered Echo did not sleep anymore. Since Io had touched its core systems, the node had gone from a slumbering relic to something closer to a caffeinated librarian with abandonment issues. Lights flickered rhythmically, the walls occasionally sighed, and at least 3 consoles had started emitting passive-aggressive reminders about overdue maintenance cycles. You'd think after a decade underground it'd be glad for the company, Cal muttered, prying open a crate filled with tangy-smelling rations. But no, it's just like every other machine I've ever known. Ungrateful, vaguely threatening, and full of surprise lasers. Sailor stood at the central hub, monitoring data from the node's external scans. To be fair, it's not shooting at us yet. Let's not set the bar too high. Biscuit meowed pointedly from his perch atop a diagnostic drone that now answered only to him. Io was chewing on a length of luminous wiring that should have been fatal but instead seemed to delight him. The wire, disturbingly, appeared to enjoy it too. Cal looked over at the screen. So how's the outside world doing? Active scans. Confirm orbital movement. They found the signal. Of course they did, he said, mouthful of tangy ration paste. We never get to have a nice week of peace, do we? You've had nearly 4 days. Days isn't peace. 4 days is a nap. Sailor turned toward him, folding her arms. We can't stay here. Nodded slowly. You want to move Io? I want to move all of us. Conquered is compromised. It can't hold against a proper incursion. Cal leaned back against a humming console. You know what's weird? Many things. I'm starting to get used to the idea that every place I end up might explode. You adapt quickly. Or I'm in denial. One of those. Io chose that moment to sneeze, which triggered a brief electrical surge that rebooted the gravity in the room. Everyone lifted 3 inches off the floor, then dropped like disgruntled luggage. Bless you, Cal groaned. The globe flared again. A new display appeared, this one marked with ancient rebel sigils, a tangle of glyphs and coordinates that only half made sense. A voice, softer, less mechanical than before, whispered into the chamber. Emergency failsafe Guardian protocol pathway open. Migration permitted. Sailor's eyes widened. It's offering us transit. To where? Cal asked. She tilted her head. A deeper node. One not mapped by Imperial archives. You're saying there's a deeper secret hideout under the already secret rebel hideout? Yes. Does it also come with its own weirdly sentient furniture? Possibly. Cal glanced at Io, who had now reconfigured the wiring into what looked like a small harp and was plucking it with his glowing ears. I vote yes, he said, because I think our kid might be trying to start a band. They followed the guidance of Conker's voice to a sealed hallway that hadn't been opened in decades. The walls were different here, organic, almost pulsing. Veins of light ran along the floor, and the air felt charged, like it remembered what stars tasted like. As they walked, the lights responded not to movement but to Io's mood. When he giggled, the corridor lit in soft greens and purples. When he sneezed again, sending a mild shockwave through the air, the lights flared crimson. I think he's developing opinions, Cal muttered. Good, S.A. said. He'll need them. The tunnel ended at a sealed door. No handle, no console, just a round depression at its center. Sailor looked at Cal. Cal looked at Io. I'm not licking it, Cal said. I wasn't going to ask. Sailor replied. Io floated forward, pressed both palms to the circle and yawned. The door melted open with a gentle chime, revealing a cavernous space that somehow existed beneath a previous node yet felt open, sky-like. It was a garden, not just plants, structures of crystal and data interwoven, towering trees with transparent leaves, glowing fungi in spirals, and an ambient hum that sounded suspiciously like jazz. Low, intelligent jazz. Cal stared. Okay, so the rebels built a data forest? Of course they did. Sailor moved carefully, reverently. This is Guardian Route. I thought it was a myth. A place where rebel minds uploaded fragments, memories, plans, dreams. It's a living archive. Io squealed and floated toward a low-hanging branch that dropped a cluster of orbs into his hands. They blinked in soft colors. Is that food? Possibly. Also a philosophy, S.A. murmured. Biscuit vanished into a shrub that immediately began purring. Cal shook his head. This place is weird. I love it. A projection shimmered to life above them. A woman older than S.A., ears longer, robes woven with circuit threads. Her eyes scanned them and her voice filled the air like wind through old wires. Child of Trine, blood of Node. You are late. Sailor bowed slightly. I didn't know I was expected. All are expected. Few arrive. Cal raised a hand. Hi. I'm the human. Probably not expected, but I brought snacks and sarcasm. The projection did not laugh, but the ground under Cal's feet glowed a little brighter, like it was amused. Your presence is deviation, the voice said. Deviation creates paths. Io babbled something. The projection turned to him. And you, little Storm, you carry codes not yet written. We will teach you to hide, to bend, to sing. Cal glanced at Sa. Did they just promise to teach our kid to sing in code? He's already doing it. The projection continued. Your time is brief. The watchers are close, but in the dark, light remembers. Then it faded. Sailor whispered. We'll be safe here for a time. And after that, we keep moving. Together. Cal nodded, looking out at the glowing forest of memory and defiance. You know what? I think I'm starting to enjoy being part of a cosmic mistake. You're not a mistake, S.A. said. Ah, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me in weeks. You're also not cosmic. There it is. They sat beneath a singing tree while Io played with a memory that looked like a soap bubble, but whispered the future. For the first time in a long time, they had more than shelter. They had time. The garden began to hum louder on the 7th day, not unpleasantly, more like a choir of trees tuning up for a concert of leaves and static. The crystalline flora shimmered in harmonic rhythm, and the data streams running through the soil bubbled with what Cal could only describe as vibes. He tried asking the forest if it was preparing for something. The only answer he got was a mushroom that projected a memory of someone doing yoga while being chased by drones. Sailor took it more seriously. She always did. The node's preparing for departure, she said, eyes focused on a slow ripple of light along the canopy. Guardian Route moves. It's alive in more ways than one. Wait, you're saying we're in a giant migrating forest computer ship? Yes. Of course. Why not? I mean, I've lived in worse places. One time I stayed in an apartment over a noodle bar that turned out to be a front for an interstellar cult. What happened? They offered me enlightenment and half-off gyoza. Biscuit pawed at Cal's boot, clearly unimpressed. Yo floated past them both, tracing glowing lines in the air with his fingers. The node reacted to him now like a child to a favorite toy. Constantly curious, perpetually delighted. He'd grown quickly, not in size, but in awareness. His vocalizations were sharper, more deliberate. Sometimes he seemed to be listening to things no one else could hear. Sailor noticed too. He's tuning himself. To what? To everything. This place, the signals in orbit, even us. He's learning balance. Great. And I'm still trying to figure out which end of the rations is edible. The projection of the Guardian, the same ethereal woman who had greeted them, appeared again, but this time it was different. No grand announcements, no riddles, just a simple phrase, choose your path. Sailor looked at Cal. This is where we decide. Cal scratched his chin. Decide what? To stay hidden or to go back? A silence fell, broken only by Io giggling at a passing cloud of bioluminescent pollen that seemed to find him hilarious. Cal sat down on a crystal log that sighed softly under his weight. Look, I'm just a mechanic. I didn't sign up for cosmic decisions. You're more than a mechanic. I'm also the proud father of an electric space baby and the only man who has successfully argued with a sentient hallway. She smiled. That too. He sighed, long and heavy. What happens if we go back? We try to spread what we've learned, hide Io in plain sight, help others like us. And if we stay, we keep running. A low rumble passed through the ground. It wasn't threatening, more like the node shifting its weight in sleep. Above them, a patch of sky opened, revealing the stars, but not just stars. Data streams, signals, ships. Looks like the Empire brought a +1, Cal muttered. They've traced the signal. We're out of time. Cal stood. So we choose now? We do. Io floated between them, then up into the air, his body glowing with soft pulses of light. He looked at Sailor, then at Cal, and pointed upward. Cal squinted. Is that a vote? Sailor nodded. He's ready. I'm not sure I am. You've already changed, Cal. When I met you, you wouldn't have risked your life for anyone but yourself. I also had fewer burns and less exposure to haunted garden networks. She stepped closer and he looked at her. Really looked. Not just the alien ears, not just the violet eyes that sometimes sparked when she was angry or amused. He saw the woman who had crossed stars for her child, who had trusted him, who had taught him that family wasn't a matter of species, but of choice. Now, he said, I'm choosing. They stepped together into the beam. The forest around them responded immediately, branches retracting, pathways forming. The entire node began to shift upward, folding like origami made of data and bark. It formed a sleek vessel, alive and awake, the last Guardian ship. As they ascended, the outer systems greeted them, distant, cautious vessels holding position, unsure what the glowing signal meant. Cal broadcast a message, simple, true. Don't shoot. We brought snacks and maybe salvation. There was silence, then laughter. A reply crackled back, bring both, and maybe a map. They emerged into space, the ship unfurling into the stars like a story being remembered. Sailor stood beside him. At the helm, Io floating at their side, Biscuit curled up in a bowl of dried leaves. What now? Cal asked. We find others, Essay said. People in hiding, survivors, those who think they're alone. And we bring them a talking baby and a moody spaceship and hope? He grinned. You know, I started this thinking I was rescuing you. You were. No, I think you rescued me. She didn't deny it. The stars opened before them and the ship sang, not loud, not bright, just a quiet tune composed of memory and resistance. A lullaby in a galaxy that had forgotten how to sleep. Cal took the controls. Let's go find someone to annoy. Lead the way, Captain. And for once, the title didn't feel like a joke. The ship curved into the dark, leaving behind only echoes and the faint smell of stardust and laughter.